Good afternoon, children.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I told you today we'll be going on to something more complicating. The only conceptual part of this chapter. We'll try and finish it quickly today. I think it's taken us about 12 days for this little chapter. If I'm not wrong, your exams finished and your classes resumed from last Monday, no?
Yes, ma'am.
So we took the entire week, 6 days. Then we took Monday, Tuesday. Today is what, Tuesday?
Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. And I think it will go to one more day. So it will go to around 11 days, that means. Anyways, you should understand, and why I took so many days for this chapter is because it's a rote learning chapter. Wherever ratification is needed, rote learning is needed, I always give more time because I know it is very difficult to sit alone and learn these things. Children, I prepared something for your explanation myself. Now it has become convenient for you. You remember on WhatsApp, I used to draw every part, I used to post in steps. So that's become easier for me now to relate things, what I have to tell you. I have already prepared my part. Before I go to that, let me tell you first what I'm going to start today. Okay. This is basically, I'll be explaining to you what I have done. This is the conceptual part of the chapter. I'll be coming to it very quickly. So before I start explaining, first I'll tell you what we are going to do today. We are going to study about endocrinology. We have just studied about all the endocrine glands of the human body. All these days we have studied about which glands?
Endocrine gland.
And
Endocrine
we
gland.
also did very good. We also did the hormones which are secreted by them. However, certain endocrine tissues are not organized to form compact endocrine glands. We have just studied one thing, that okay, we have endocrine glands and endocrine glands will secrete hormones. But this does not always happen. Okay, understand this part. Certain endocrine tissues are not organized to form compact endocrine glands. They are present isolated in the body. That is, hormones are also secreted by some tissues. This is something interesting for you. As of now, we know one thing कि सारे endocrine tissues come together and एक gland बन जाता है जिसको what we call as endocrine gland, and endocrine gland starts secreting some hormones. Whatever we studied till now, we studied this only, that we have some tissues. We call these tissues as endocrine tissues. They get organized, and after these endocrine tissues they get organized, they form a gland which is known as endocrine gland. And endocrine gland starts secreting hormones. But beta हमेशा ऐसा नहीं होता है. There are some tissues, endocrine tissues basically, they remain isolated in the body. Isolated means they do not get organized, they do not form glands. They remain separated, isolated, and they also give out some hormones. So we are going to study about some examples of hormones secreted by various tissues. Did you understand the difference between what we did earlier and what we are going to do now? Anybody?
Ma'am, we did glands earlier, but now we are doing hormones which are secreted by tissues.
Yes. Earlier we said very good कि endocrine tissues they come together बहुत अच्छे से organized proper way में and they form glands and glands secrete hormones. अभी हम लोग क्या पढ़ेंगे? We are going to study कि ऐसा हमेशा नहीं होता है. That all the endocrine tissues will come together and वो मिलके एक gland बना लेंगे and then only the hormones will be secreted. Sometimes tissues alone, when they are isolated, will also start secreting hormones. I hope I'm clear. What are we going to study? Look at this heading. Various tissue hormones and the mechanism of hormone action. These are the two things we are going to study. So we are not studying about the gland hormones. We are going to study about tissue hormones. Everybody is clear with the difference of gland hormones and tissue hormones?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's do some examples of hormones which are secreted by tissues and not by glands. The first one I'm taking up with you is hormones of heart. Okay, though the names are going to be a little difficult now, but we'll try and learn them. So much details we do not have in the NCERT, but since we have time, so I thought chalo kar lete hain. Let's talk about hormones of heart, beta. a very important peptide hormone called erythro. Can you pronounce this, anybody, before I pronounce?
Ma'am, it's of kidney.
Let's do heart first. Let's do heart. Actually, I've not done heart with you first. A very important peptide hormone known as, come on, pronounce ANF. What is the full form?
Atyl
Natriuretic factor.
factor.
Let's do one by one. A stands for
Atrial.
atrial. Very good. N stands for
Natriuretic
natriuretic, and F stands for
factor.
factor. So this A word, atrial, comes in this name because this hormone is secreted by the atrial walls of our heart. What are atrial walls?
Walls of artery.
Walls of aorta.
Walls of artery.
Walls of aorta.
Okay. And when is this hormone secreted? When what happens to the blood pressure? It increases or decreases?
Increases.
Increases.
Yes, beta. This hormone is secreted when blood pressure increases. So when this hormone will be secreted, this secretion or this hormone will cause dilation of the blood vessels. So it will reduce the blood pressure. So basically it is helping in controlling what? In controlling what pressure? Blood pressure.
Blood pressure.
How is it helping in controlling? As soon as the blood pressure shoots up in an individual, the atrial walls will start secreting this hormone. And what will this hormone do? It will dilate the blood vessels. What do you mean by dilate? What is dilation of blood vessels?
Make it narrower.
To enlarge.
See, we have just got two different answers. One person says to make blood vessels enlarged. The other person says to make blood vessels shorter. So there's a contradiction here in the answers.
Enlarging.
Let's have a third opinion.
Ma'am, made wider.
Okay, two people for wider. Only one left with narrowing.
And
Yes,
wider.
beta. Yes. अगर widen
Ma'am,
होगा तो
wider.
blood pressure increase होगा कि decrease होगा?
Decrease.
Decrease.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Pakka. If
Yes,
your
ma'am,
blood
it should be enlargement.
data, that's what I'm asking you. If you, according to you, it is Sony is late today. Let me admit her first. Okay. Let's see what you are saying. You are saying it's widening of your blood vessels. Okay. So what will happen? The walls of your arteries or these veins or the arterial walls that you've just discussed, they open up. And now what will happen? If they open up, will the blood flow increase or will it decrease?
Ma'am, blood flow will increase and blood pressure will decrease.
How many of you agree with what she's saying?
Ma'am, what is the question? Can you repeat?
Beta, I'm asking, what do you mean by dilation of blood vessels? If you see this word over here, Sanvi is raising hand. Let's ask her. Dilation of blood vessels. What does this mean? This is the only word which needs attention in this paragraph. Tell me, what is dilation of blood vessels?
Broadening of the lumen of the blood vessel so that more blood comes and constriction is less. So it's a smoother flow.
Okay, the blood flow
Yes,
will
ma'am.
increase according to you, what you are saying. So what will happen? What will happen to the blood pressure if they become widened?
Pressure will decrease.
Ma'am, blood pressure reduces.
Excellent.
And
So let's not
flow
get confused.
increases.
Very good, very good. Remember, this is a kind of a hormone which is going to control the blood pressure. As soon as the blood pressure increases in an individual's body, then the atrial walls of the heart, they release this hormone. The name of the hormone is ENF. What will this hormone do? It will go and dilate the blood vessels. That means it will make them wider. Obviously, when the path is more, but a simple सी बात है. Think about a wide road and think about a very narrow street and think about traffic. The pressure of traffic would be higher in a narrow street, on a narrow street or on a wide road.
On a narrow street.
Narrow street.
Because the space is less. So there would be a lot of pushing it around because the pressure is going to be more there. But if it is broader, there is no pressure of traffic. Exactly same thing happens. Here the blood vessels, they are widened up, and then if they become widened, the blood flows smoothly and the pressure automatically decreases down. Does anybody know this biologically? What is this term called as widening of blood vessels? There is a term for this, a proper scientific term which we use for widening of blood vessels. Beta, it is known as vasodilation. VASO, vasodilation. Okay, those who want to remember can remember. But again, I keep telling you, this is not a part of your syllabus. Just if you feel like you can remember this word. It's called vasodilation. VASODILATION. This is vasodilation. Vasodilation means your blood vessels are becoming white, and they're becoming white because of this hormone ANF. And how is this helping you? It is going to reduce the blood pressure. Is ANF clear to everybody? We
Yes,
move on to
ma'am.
hormone.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Beta. We move on to the hormone of kidney. What was the name of the hormone that we had in the heart? Very quickly.
ANF,
ANF. It was secreted by.
atrial walls,
And this hormone causes what in blood vessels?
dilation of blood
Dilation
Because of which what happens to blood pressure?
reduces.
vessels.
So you mean this hormone will be secreted at what condition? When the blood pressure is increased or when it is decreased?
Increases.
Increased.
Yes, when it is increased, because it's gone up to a safe, it's not in the safer level, it's gone higher. So it has to be decreased. So this hormone will come in the scene. Is it a hormone which is secreted by a gland or a tissue?
Tissue.
Tissue.
Which
Tissue.
was of which tissue? Tissue of which was?
Tissue of atrial walls.
Atrial walls.
So now we are moving on to the hormone of the kidney, a peptide hormone called, yes, give me the name very quickly.
Erythropoietin.
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 Erythropoietin. It is produced by the juxtaglomerular cells of the kidney. This hormone stimulates the formation of RBCs. Okay, this process is what we call as erythropoiesis. What is erythropoiesis? Formation of RBC. RBC, we have another name. What is the other name of RBCs?
Erythrocytes.
Erythrocytes.
Erythrocytes. So formation of RBCs, what is that process known as?
Erythropoiesis.
Erythropoiesis.
Speak out everybody. Erythrocytes, RBCs are also known as,
Erythrocytes.
and the formation of RBC, the process is known as.
Erythropoiesis.
This is done by activating the increased erythropoiesis in the hemopoietic tissues. Chaliye, let's discuss this again one by one. The name of the peptide hormone produced is, very quickly we're talking about the kidney part.
Erythropoietin.
This is released by the JG cells. In short, juxtaglomerular cells of the kidneys are called JG cells. J stand for juxta and glomerular ka G le leti hai. So this becomes JG cells. What do you call these cells in short?
JG cells.
JG cells.
These cells are very important, beta. These cells in the kidney are very important. They mainly are involved in three functions. Either they will synthesize, they will store, or they will secrete the enzymes. Okay? Three functions they are involved in: synthesizing, storing, and secreting. Tell me the three main functions of JG cells of the kidney.
Synthesizing, storing, and secreting.
Yes, they are actually very smooth muscle cells. They deliver the blood to the glomerulus. The main function is also delivering blood to the glomerulus. Okay, beta, let me revise this first sentence with you. There is a peptide hormone which is released in the kidney. What is the name of the hormone?
Erythropoietin.
See, beta, if you will speak, you will be able to learn. So please speak out. And this hormone is produced by which cells of the kidney?
JG cells.
JG cells. Three functions main I told you of JG cells. What is it?
Synthesizing, storing, and secretion.
See, those who will speak will learn it here only. Others will have to struggle otherwise. It's better you speak, beta ji. Chaliye, let's go further. This hormone stimulates a
Yes, ma'am.
process. Yes, beta.
Ma'am, could you please repeat the functions of JD cells?
Okay, we did 3 functions. One was secretion. Does anybody remember the other 2?
Storing and
Storing and
synthesizing.
synthesizing.
Synthesis, storage, and
Secreting.
Secretion.
secretion and synthesis means same. That means most of you have
Storing.
forgotten. One by one, you tell me the 3 functions I told you. Very good. One was, yes, synthesize, store, and secrete the enzymes. The main enzyme is renin, beta. Actually, main enzyme which they do is renin only. This is a very minor amount of enzyme which the hormone that we are discussing. Basically, renin hormone they are mainly involved in synthesizing, storing, and secreting. They also do one more function, beta. I don't know who asked, but let me tell you. They deliver blood to the glomerulus. They're smooth muscle cells. So they will carry or they will deliver the blood to the glomerulus. Do you remember glomerulus? Nephron, kidney.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Not of
So they will also
capillaries.
deliver blood to the glomerulus. I think you did it in class 10th or 9th.
10th.
I'm 10.
Then you remember. Then you remember. We have come across a new word. I want you to focus on the spelling of this word. Formation of RBCs. What is this process known as?
Erythropoiesis.
Erythropoiesis.
See, it is all related to RBCs. That is why erythro word is coming over here everywhere. What was the name of the hormone?
Erythropoietin.
Yes. And the formation of RBCs is known as?
Erythropoiesis.
Erythropoiesis.
Yes, and there is one more. Very good. There is one more erythro word which has come just now, the last word in this paragraph. What is this tissue? Hemopoietic tissues. What are hemopoietic tissues? Those tissues which give rise to blood cells. See, beta, in this process of erythropoiesis, क्या बन रहा है? Blood cells are being formed. So these blood cells must be formed from some tissues. So those tissues which will give rise to blood cells, or from which these blood cells would be made. Okay, these tissues are known as which tissues? Hemopoietic tissues. So what are hemopoietic tissues, beta? It is basically, you can say, those tissues which will give rise to blood cells. Which blood cells am I specifying over here?
Red blood cells.
RBCs. There is a little difference in the hemopoietic tissues of the embryo fetus and the hemopoiesis in an individual after birth. There is a bit of difference over here. Beta, in the fetal stage or in the embryo stage, the hemopoietic tissue, when I say hemopoietic tissue, I mean those tissues which will lead to the formation of blood vessels. Basically, it is the bone marrow, the yolk sac, and the liver. Clear? Which tissues before the birth act like hemopoietic tissues?
Bone marrow.
Bone marrow, lymph nodes, liver and spleen. Okay, but after birth, this hemopoietic tissue is only the bone marrow. Clear, everybody? Only the bone marrow can act as a hemopoietic tissue after the birth. Before birth, when it is the fetal stage, okay, at that time, many cells or many tissues can act as hemopoietic tissues. We just discussed about bone marrow. They can be lymph nodes also, they can be liver, they can be spleen cells. But after birth, it is always the bone marrow. So name the peptide hormone which is produced by the JG cells of kidney.
Erythropoietin.
Yes. This hormone stimulates the process of, what is this process called as?
Erythropoiesis.
What is erythropoiesis?
Formation of
RBCs.
And RBCs will be made from which tissues?
Hemopoietic tissues.
Hemopoietic tissues.
Those tissues which will change into blood vessels. So we have done 2 individual tissue hormones. One was the ANF and the second is?
Erythropoietin.
ANF was secreted by?
Atrial walls.
Atrial walls.
Atrial walls
walls
of
of
heart.
the heart. Very good. So when you make a table or a column for your self-explanatory notes, you can simply make 3 columns. Name of the hormone, secreted by, and then you can simply take it as function. So if I would make my notes, I would simply write the first hormone as ANF. Second column would be atrial walls of the heart. And second is reduce the blood pressure. The third column would take up reducing the blood pressure. When I'll move on to number 2, I would write my hormone as, what hormone name will I write, children?
Erythropoietin.
And in the second cell, when I write source, I would write JG cells of the kidney. In the function column, I would simply write erythropoiesis by hemopoietic tissue. Erythropoiesis by hemopoietic tissue. That is all. We know what is erythropoiesis. We know what is hemopoietic tissue. So hardly in 10 words, you can sum up the functions when you're making your notes for this. Hormones of the gastrointestinal tract we are coming to. The GI tract. It develops from the endoderm of the embryo. We have already done this many times about the primary germ layers of the embryo. So GI tract develops from which layer?
Endodermal layer.
Endocrine cells that are present in different parts of this tract secrete 4 major types of hormones. So we are going to have 4 hormones in the GI tract. The first is gastrin. This will act on the gastric glands and it will stimulate the secretion of hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen. Which is the first hormone very quickly?
Gastrin.
This, okay, I am going further. I will put on GI. My subdivisions would be gastrin. Gastrin acts on which glands?
Gastric glands.
Okay, it secretes 2 things. What are the 2 things?
Hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen.
What is the function of hydrochloric acid?
To provide a acidic pH polarization.
Yes, in the stomach we have the presence of HCl. You must have done in class 10. Why we have HCl in the stomach? There are 2 reasons. First is to provide acidic medium so that some enzymes can become active. And second also that in case some harmful microorganism enters, it reaches the stomach, then that can be killed as well. So we know that hydrochloric acid is there. What about pepsinogen? Any idea about pepsinogen?
Gets stimulated into pepsin, which digests the proteins in the stomach.
Yes, basically this pepsinogen later gets converted into the enzyme pepsin. I think you studied about the enzyme pepsin in class 10th. You remember P for pepsin, P for proteins?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Pepsinogen, it is this pepsinogen in inactive form which later becomes the enzyme pepsin. So obviously it will help you in the digestion of what part? Which
Proteins.
nutrient? So gastrin, only 2 things to remember. It is acting on which gland?
Gastric gland.
2 things it is going to secrete. What are the 2 things?
HCl and hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen.
Very good. Let's move on to the next one, that is secretin. This will act on the exocrine portion of pancreas. You remember, we know that pancreas is a mixed gland, both exo and endocrine. So this will act on which part? Exocrine part or endocrine part?
Exocrine.
And it will this also will secrete 2 things, stimulate the secretion of 2 things. What are the 2 things?
Water and bicarbonate ions.
What is the formula of bicarbonate ions?
It's
HCO3 minus.
Sure?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what is carbonate? What is carbonate?
CO3
minus.
So good, you remember this. So second is secretin. It is going to act on the exocrine portion of pancreas. This is also going to secrete. What were the 2 things which are secreted by gastrin?
Hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen.
And what are the 2 things which secretin is going to secrete?
Water and bicarbonate ions.
Very good. We are moving on to the third one, very interesting one, CCK. Okay, cholecystokinin. Chole, CHOLE, chole. The first T stands for C. The second C is cysto. and the third is kinin. Please give me the full form of CCK.
Cholecystokinin.
This will act on two things, both the pancreas and the gallbladder. This will also secrete two things. First is pancreas. See, when it is acting on pancreas, it is going to secrete this enzyme. Which enzyme? Pancreatic enzyme. And then here we are going to have bile juice. What about bile juice? Where is it secreted and where is it produced? Where is it stored?
It is produced in
It is
Gallbladder.
produced in gallbladder and stored in liver. It is
Do you-
produced by liver and stored in gallbladder.
yes, ma'am. It is
Good of
produced
a
by
gut.
liver and stored
Produced
by
by
gall.
liver and stored in gallbladder.
Yes, yes. Yeah, she just got a bit confused. Okay, so this is CCK. Full form of CCK?
Cholecystokinin.
Cholecystokinin.
Two target organs we have, pancreas and gallbladder. Two things, it will secrete pancreatic enzymes and bile juice. We are moving on to the last one here, GIP. This is secreted by the intestinal mucosa. What is intestinal mucosa? You can always guess. There is no negative marking for guessing.
Mucus layer in intestine.
Yes, basically, see, it is a barrier. Basically, it's a mucosa layer in the intestine. How does it help? Any idea? Good, she's given us the correct answer. Can you think about it? Why do we have this layer?
Ma'am, to
Intestinal
prevent
mucosa.
matlab prevent the inner lining of stomach from damaging.
Hmm.
To
This is very
absorb the
useful.
nutrients.
Pardon, Beta?
To absorb the nutrients.
Absorbing the nutrients. No, not exactly. Beta, hota kya hai this intestinal mucosa? See, you have the inner lining of the intestinal tract. That is a part of the mucosa. Okay. What will happen over here? Have you heard about gastrointrinsic disorders and all?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know about gastrointestinal disorders? Have you heard about any gastrointestinal disorders? बहुत simple सी बात है बेटा सुनो. There is an individual which has an immune system like me and you. We all are individuals. We have an immune system and we have an external environment. Is it okay for everybody? So this mucosa, this intestinal mucosa will become a barrier. It will become a barrier between the immune system and the external environment. How does it become a barrier? It will produce a mucus layer. When it produces a mucus layer, it will start secreting some antimicrobial proteins. That means some proteins which are antimicrobial. So if any microbe tries to enter the intestine, what will this do? What will it do? Antimicrobial means what? It will fight against the
Kills
microbes or it will
microbes.
support them.
It kills them.
Yes, it's going to kill the microbes. So it is helping you or it is going to harm you.
Help us.
It's going to help you. It's acting like a barrier. It is a barrier between your intestines and the external environment, immunity and external environment. Its function is to stop or inhibit the secretion of gastric juices and its motility into stomach. What is this? Motility into stomach. Function is to stop. We're talking about this hormone, GIP. Try and understand this line. Its function is to stop or inhibit the secretion of gastric juice and the motility of gastric juice into the stomach. We don't need gastric juice in the stomach, or do we need it?
We need
We
it.
need. We need it.
Then why is it stopping it? This gastric inhibitory, the name itself tells you inhibitory peptide. So that means it's inhibiting. It is somewhere obstructing the process. I'll give you 1 minute. Just yes, Peter. Speak.
Maybe
To
in case of
prevent its over secretion.
Ma'am, when it is produced in excess amount, then it inhibits.
Okay. See this gastric inhibitory peptide beta. We have another name for this. This is also glucose dependent polypeptide. Commonly in scientific language or bio language, we call it as a glucose dependent polypeptide. This is of course an inhibiting hormone. What will it do? What will this do? It's a very weak inhibitor. It is not a very strong inhibitor. Don't feel that it's such a strong inhibitor that it will be able to stop the secretion of gastric acid to 2 level. Basically, it's a very, very weak inhibitor. So what will it do? It will just block the secretion of hydrochloric acid into the stomach. This is another function that it is going to do. What is it going to basically do? Tell me very quickly. Emptying of the stomach.
We stop the secretion of hydrochloric acid.
Peter, it also
Secretion
helps you
of
in emptying of the stomach. How will it help you in emptying of the stomach? Thoda bahut idea? No?
Ma'am, by contracting muscles.
And we said it depends on, this is known as which kind of a hormone? It depends on what?
Glucose.
Yes, it's known as a glucose dependent hormone. Why do you think it is known as glucose dependent hormone?
Ma'am, it might need glucose to act or some energy to act. Ma'am, just a guess.
Okay, just a guess. It needs some energy to act. Fine. Any other guesses? Good. At least you people are guessing now. Guess out, children. If you don't know the fact, you can always guess out. This is
Yes,
how we
it may-
learn things.
It may be secreted by the amount of glucose present.
Okay. Another reason which has come up is this. It's dependent on glucose. Will its amount anyhow matter because of glucose? Think on this term. Glucose dependent.
Sorry, ma'am, what? Please repeat.
How the amount of glucose can affect the function of this hormone. We studied about
Ma'am,
diabetes.
might be to secrete. Yes, ma'am.
Just related to diabetes, wala thing, you'll get an idea a bit about this. A little idea if you get about this, if you relate it to diabetes. What does the word inhibitory tell you?
To stop.
To stop. Entirely stop, or it can be make it slow also.
Yes, ma'am,
think
it
you're
can
not
make
able-
it slow.
I think this part you're not able to understand, Peter. Dekho, basically understand this. This is a peptide, normal peptide hormone. This decreases the secretion of the stomach acid. Okay? Basically, it is going to decrease the secretions of the stomach, whether it is the gastric juices or it is the hydrochloric acid, though not mentioned here. But basically, it is going to help in decreasing the secretion of both of them. Secretion of gastric juices and secretion of both hydrochloric acid also. And why does it do this? So that it can protect the small intestine from damage. Number one, clear? Number two, it tries to reduce the rate at which food is transferred through the stomach. Got important two functions beta. It is inhibiting. दोनों चीजों को slow कर रहा है. कौन सी दो चीजों को slow करता है? ध्यान से सुनिए. The first is it is going to decrease the secretion of acids and gastric juices. Okay? Number two, what it is going to do is it is also going to reduce the rate at which food is transferred through the stomach. So basically, it is inhibiting the secretion of gastric juices and acids, and it is also inhibiting the motility in the stomach. Motility का मतलब यहाँ पे क्या हो गया? Movement of what I told you, the transfer of food through the stomach. Is it okay? Let's elaborate this part now. Let me see. Inhibiting the production of, reducing down the secretion of which two things I just told you?
Acid
One is
and
gastric juice.
Acid and gastric juice.
Yes, and this is does to protect what?
Small intestine.
Small intestine. Yes, this is basically done to protect the small intestine from the damage made by higher amount of acids. And this motility part which I discussed with you, it is inhibiting the motility, movement. So it is inhibiting the motility of what beta? It is reducing the speed at which food is transferred through the stomach. It is reducing the speed by which food is being transferred by the stomach. That is why we say motility into the stomach. Secretion कम होगा gastric juices का, So digestion process will be slow or it will be quicker?
Slow.
Slow. So the motility of digested food from the stomach into after stomach, the digested food goes to
Small intestine.
beta. Digestion process after the food is digested in the stomach, churning process and all is done. Food, where does food go from stomach?
Small intestine.
Beta. Class 10 we have done digestive system. It will go to
Ma'am?
small intestine.
Ma'am,
Yes,
you
beta.
said it's related to diabetes. Its role is to stimulate insulin secretion.
Beta, that is a little complicated. I thought first I'll explain it on that terms, but then I felt you will not be able to relate it as of now. Usko abhi chhod do. You'll get very confused because that is entirely medical thing. I'll see at the end if I have time. I'll try and relate it to you. I'll tell you how is it related to diabetes. Okay, but just 1 second. Let me complete these 4 lines first. What is written in your book related to this? GIP secreted by
Intestinal
mucosa.
Intestinal mucosa.
inhibiting the secretion of 2 things. What are the 2 things?
Acid
and
and
gastric juices.
Okay. Acid it is inhibiting because it wants to protect what?
Small intestine.
lining of
Small
stomach.
intestine. And gastric juice it is inhibiting so that what decreases? The motility decreases in the stomach. What thing motility? Kiska motility it is trying to decrease, beta?
food.
Food transfer.
Yes. Very good. The speed or the rate at which food is transferred through the stomach. So it is inhibiting, it is slowing down both the things. Very quickly, I'll try if I can tell you a bit about diabetes wala thing. We are taking up, which was the first hormone we did? There were tissue, which part we did? Heart, if you remember. What was the name of the hormone?
ANF.
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 Secreted, everybody secreted by,
Atrial walls of the heart.
okay. And its main function was to reduce
Blood pressure.
by decreasing the pressure in the blood, by dilating the vessels. I gave you a medical term for this. What is this called?
Vasodilation.
Vasodilation.
Too good. Name the hormone of the heart that I have done.
ANF.
Atrial natriuretic factor.
Yes. Now I move on to kidney. Name the hormone of the kidney.
Erythropoietin.
Erythropoietin.
Released by which cells of the kidney?
JG cells.
JG cells.
G cells.
Kidney cells. It stimulates which process? Please join the meeting once it gets disconnected.
Erythropoiesis.
Erythropoiesis.
That means formation of RBCs from which tissues?
Hemopoietic tissues.
Poietic tissues.
We also did a little bit about hemopoietic tissues, that which tissues act as hemopoietic tissues before birth and after birth. Let's not go to that again. Then we have done the GI tract. GI tract, we've got 4 major hormones. The first one was,
Gastrin.
Gastrin.
as of now, I'm showing it to you. And now this will act on which glands?
Gastric gland.
Gastric glands.
What are the 2 things which are produced?
Hydrochloric
HCl
acid
HCl and
pepsinogen.
pepsinogen.
The second one was?
Secretin.
Secretin.
Good. Now, what 2 things this is going to secrete?
Water and
bicarbonate
bicarbonate ions.
Bicarbonate ions.
Ions.
What is the full form of CCK?
Cholecystokinin.
Very good. And it helps in the secretion of which 2 things?
Biojuice and
Pancreatic juice and bile juice.
And bile juice.
Then we did GIP. It is inhibiting the secretion of which 2 juices?
acid and gastric.
And gastric juice.
And motility. What do you mean by motility here?
Movement of food.
Movement of food.
Yes. So how many types of tissues, hormones we have done? Very quickly, just the headings I want. 1, 2, 3. What are the 3 types? Heart, second one.
Heart, kidney, gastrointestinal tract.
Gastrointestinal tract.
So we have done the 3 individual tissues that